Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield on the north side of the old state capitol at the Springfield and Central Illinois African American Museum. Well, it's not easy to find, but if you go in this building and go up to the second floor, you'll find it. After 15 years of planning, they've just celebrated their first anniversary. Well, Jerry Blakely, last February, during Black History Month, the African American Museum found a home.
Yes.
And so you're celebrating your one-year anniversary.
Absolutely. 1 year here, the 23rd of February last year, we had our gala grand opening, and it was a gala grand opening. And we were so well received by the Springfield community.
And you've been here a year.
A year.
Yeah, and, I bet it's been hectic trying to get things up and maintain a museum, because you're all doing it part-time, right?
Absolutely, and we're operating, we've operated this whole year on a voluntary staff, and we have volunteers that conduct tours, volunteers that have put the office together, volunteers that put the exhibits together, and it's kind of hectic, but we know the first year, the hardest part was getting started, and now we're sustaining it, and then we're growing. You know, we're excited about the growth.
Well, because you're going to continue to collect stuff, because you ask the families and churches and everybody who's been in Springfield for a long time to contribute pictures and documents and anything that will work for in an exhibit. So you're still collecting, right?
Absolutely, and anything that we're not using in a current exhibit, we have storage space that we will save and that we will feature in other exhibits, future exhibits, and then they might be featured in another exhibit. But the important thing is saving them. You know, getting them, collecting them, and then preserving them, and then saving them.
Right. I want to draw attention first to these exhibits over here, and I like what you've done here, because this is really localizes things. You have, I think, 5 or 6 of these types of exhibits, and we're going to just kind of focus on one to give people an example of what of what it is. What you've done is you've taken Black associates of Abraham Lincoln, who were here at his time and who worked and knew him, like Mr. Dunnigan up here.
Right.
And you've traced his family through the years to today.
Right. Could just a little correction
Sure, correct
in that Charlotte Johnson and Margaret Collins took the lead on this.
Oh, okay,
and
great.
We call them panels, and they put together panels on colored people that were here during Lincoln's times and that played significant roles, whether people realize or not, in Lincoln's life. And then we traced it, they traced it down through his descendants.
And that's all the way down to the folks
the
down
McGees
here who still live here, huh?
Right.
And it looks like that picture was taken last year.
A few years,
Very
a couple
recently,
of years ago, and those were all descendants of Donnegan. And the Fleurville family.
And you've done
here.
that with this other one, the Flourvilles.
And it's really interesting because we had a display of these at Abundant Faith called Truth Be Told about 2 years ago. And some of the descendants did come, and they spoke to the gathering about their relatives, ancestors.
Well, you know, these were such a good idea that the Abraham Lincoln Home, the National Park Service, has borrowed them for an exhibit of theirs.
We had a program on Saturday over at Abundant Faith again, and it was for boys. And they wanted to make sure that the young men knew that there were colored people living during Lincoln's times, and that they were associated with Lincoln. And I understand it went very well, very well.
Now, if you look around this room, I'm struck by many of the photographs that line the wall right at eye level.
Yes.
And so what you've done is you have these great black and white photographs here, and you've asked people to bring in information about who are these people.
Absolutely.
And you get interesting results. But what I like is the fact that they were all taken by the same photographer, and we're looking over here at Doc Helm. And I'll tell you what, he was quite a guy, wasn't he?
photographer extraordinaire.
Yeah, he was.
Great guy.
He worked for the Secretary of State for 50 years, I guess, right?
I believe about that, that length of time.
And documented not only state government business, but everything about Springfield. I think right now we're looking at Joe Louis at the governor's mansion, and that would have been taken by him.
Right.
A visitor to, gee, what governor would that have been? Stevenson, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah, but he documented everyday life in Springfield, and he was certainly good in the African American community because his legacy is photographic history of the organizations, of the businesses, and the everyday life of African Americans here in Springfield.
We're going to see a lot more of his work as we move this way, because what you've done is you've actually categorized some of them. There are pictures of black-owned businesses in Springfield, and there are pictures of people who were involved in the medical professions, doctors, and people who have helped, of course, improve the lives of untold numbers of people. And that's why I wanted to walk into this room here. On our eye level here, and we're going to talk about these more later, these are all health professionals, doctors, etc., right?
Right, and this exhibit was donated to the museum by St. John's Hospital. And these were African American doctors that worked there on the staff, doctors and nurses that worked there on the staff at St. John's Hospital. And they thought that a fitting place where to be would be here in the African American History Museum.
And if we look at the pictures lower down, and won't talk about these specifically now, but these were the black-owned businesses I was talking about, and there were a lot of them, weren't there?
And many of them were right in this area downtown, going east on Washington. Many of them were.
Terrific photographs. Doc really had an eye, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Man, they were terrific.
Yes, he did. He captured Springfield life. That's the best way I can put it. He just captured it.
Well, Bob Davis, we're just a couple of months past the 150th anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. And you had a big role in celebrating that anniversary recently.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. It was something that I really looked forward to and felt honored to actually, to create, design, and also produce that particular program. I'm on the board of directors of the Abraham Lincoln Association, and of course, the board approved the program. And then working with people at Westminster Presbyterian Church, the old state capitol, and then principally with a lot of people within the overall Springfield community, a number of African Americans, as a matter of fact, and supported by the African American churches here in Springfield. Then it turned out to be a very important program. I thought that it was a program that generated a lot of pride and joy for the Springfield community. And we had a lot of feedback that supported that thinking. But there's no question, though, that the Emancipation Proclamation was a critical document that was signed by Lincoln. And it opened the door to freedom, leading towards the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution.
And in fact, one of the exhibits here in the African American Museum is an enlarged Emancipation Proclamation, big enough that you can actually read it.
Well, as a matter of fact, you can. And the museum is quite honored to have the document. This particular document, by the way, was given to us by the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum. And so we had it mounted, and we used it in some of our programs. So it was something that was quite nice. But it's something that was very important too. When you look at it historically, I was talking with someone a couple of days ago, and we were talking about the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation that Lincoln announced in September. It's on September the 22nd, 1862. And then the actual Emancipation Proclamation that he signed on New Year's Day, January the 1st, 1863, and some of the differences. And we were very pleased when we talked about the whole idea that Lincoln took the national government and placed it on the side of freedom, on the side of the anti-slavery movement, as opposed to supporting slavery. And then another critical feature that was involved was when he actually invited the black man to join that Civil War fight, to fight for Union and for freedom. And then later on, both he and General Grant and a number of different generals, as well as the news media, began to recognize the role and the contributions of the United States colored troops and sailors to that struggle for freedom. And a lot of that, it ties directly back to the Emancipation Proclamation. So there's a lot of history there.
There are some interesting exhibits in here, examples of some photographs of exactly what you're talking about, and it's the evolution of the black soldier from the time, and you interpret a black Civil War soldier, so you know what that was all about. But these here are World War II soldiers, and particularly at the bottom, the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the first black pilots, and showed well.
Oh, very much so, as a matter of fact. I mean, this is a natural outgrowth. See, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, African Americans were involved in every war that this country has had. And coming up to World War II, where a number of these men fought, then of course, in some ways, they were in segregated units. But then as the war evolved, and then when President Truman issued his executive order, then stating that the Army and the military services had to desegregate, then that was something else. That was another contribution and resulted in a major impact, whereby today you have African American young men and women serving in all the branches of the government and at all levels of the officers' ranks. So that's important.
Let's take over here, Bob, because I want to show another example that's in the museum here. This is pretty interesting because the black soldiers, this is after World War II, I believe, or during World War II, had their own parade in Springfield.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is quite interesting. This was obviously long before I came here, but that's part of the museum and the history of the museum. But you see them here proudly marching here in. In this particular picture.
And look at the drum down here. I mean, they're clearly marked colored, which is something that would never be said today. But that demarked that group as a black troop, and that was at 11th and Monroe in Springfield.
Yeah, and that reflects the history at that particular time. So, and we know then that there's been a lot of growth and a lot of change since that particular picture was taken.
Oh yeah. And we've got an example down here of some local fellas who look real happy to be in the service. I don't know if they really are or not, but they sure look pleased to be doing it. And they're in the various branches.
Yeah, and I think that this is more contemporary. This is probably around, well, it could be, after the Korean War, for example.
Yeah.
But it clearly follows the picture that we just looked at, the World War II picture.
Yeah. This museum is full of interesting old photographs, and we've talked and we'll talk more about Doc Helm, who took many of these. But it's a terrific example of what was going on through the years. Thank you, Bob.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you.
Well, Jerry, we mentioned that part of the exhibit space here is devoted to medical professionals in the Springfield area who made a difference and who are still making a difference. Yes. And it's interesting because what we've done is we've taken these and you've got them right at eye level where we can walk our way through the years from the earliest to the and I was asking you about these people individually, and you met Dr. Kinnebrew's wife and actually got a lot of information about him.
Wife and daughter.
And daughter.
Yes, yes. His wife was Jessie Mae Findley, and she shared a lot of information with me for an earlier exhibit that I did at Lincoln Library. And she shared with me about the life of Dr. Kinnebrew, how he started a hospital in Jacksonville, Illinois, and how he practiced medicine here at St. John's. And during that time, as an African American, she said that he had to enter the back door. He practiced medicine there. His patients were both white and black, but he had to enter in through the rear door because that's the way the times were then.
He was a surgeon. surgeon.
Yes.
And he would come to Springfield to perform surgery, but couldn't go in the front door.
Couldn't go in the
That's
front door.
incredible.
He had to enter the rear door.
Oh.
And then when he became ill, shortly before his death, they put him in the colored section at the hospital because that's the way things were during that time.
Yeah.
And she talked to the attending physician and the hospital, and they changed it and moved him into a section where he would get better service, in the white section where he would get better service.
He was, this picture was taken around 1940.
Yes.
He was a skilled enough surgeon that there were plenty of white patients who were asking for his services.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and even white doctors, white doctors.
And as we move along here, this is interesting. Dr. Webster was the first black dentist to open a practice here.
Yes, I believe that he was.
And this is a picture of him, but this is even better because this is taken by Helm down here and shows him at work.
And you know, we have some of his patients, former patients, that come here. Oh, he was my doctor.
And of course, Dr. Edwin, I'm going to get out of the way here. Dr. Edwin Lee, most people that live around Springfield have heard of him.
Yes, yes. Community doctor, community activist, you know, served on various boards here. A street named after him, a school named after him.
President of the Board of Education of District 186.
Yes.
And Copley First Citizen, which does not come easily.
No.
You have to do a lot of really good works to do that.
No.
And here's a picture of him in later life holding his gavel. I'm not sure what that must have been when he was a president of the school board or something.
Working with the Frontiers.
Oh, maybe that's
one
it.
of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. And then if we come down the line, we have some younger folks who are still in practice here, and they're still. Cynthia Thomas is still practicing medicine.
Yes.
Donald Ross, general surgery. Sam Gaines,
Yes.
I know he's still practicing.
Right.
And then Victoria Nichols Johnson,
She's
and we
retired.
mentioned her. Yeah, she's retired. She's actually from Springfield.
Yes.
And active in the board here.
She
isn't
serves on our board of directors. Yes.
And she had a terrific career.
Yes.
Well, Archie Lawrence, you have been involved with this museum in this effort for quite a while, I guess.
Yes, I have. We started out, how we got involved in it is that we were doing some historical things and was concerned about where Lincoln went. And some of the things that came out of that was that during the time where before the Abraham Lincoln Museum, statements were made in regards to the riot, the race riots. And
of
so
1908.
Of 1908. Yeah. And when that happened, we identified where those homes were, and so now you see where those markers are down, the markers are today. Well, from that, we found out about the colored people's home. And so what we decided to do, especially with the help of Barbara Dickerman, the NAACP, Carl Madison was the president at that time. I believe I was like the vice president at the time. I had just given that up because I had been the president during the time of the voting rights lawsuit and all that. So I finally gave that up, and I was just like the vice president. But one of the tasks that we were doing was to figure out what we were going to do with the colored people's home, and that's what we were trying to do.
And
with
that's
the help
one of
of Carl, and under Carl Madison, we were able, the NAACP under Carl Madison was able to get that on the National Register.
This is an interesting story. We'll talk about Ms. Monroe later, but first, let's look at this picture right here, because this is the house that stood at 4th and Lawrence, where the Dana Thomas house is now. It was torn down, and some of the bricks from that were then used to build the colored home, which is on South 12th Street. So in 1904, when that was actually built, it was built with the bricks from, it's ironic, isn't it, from probably one of the richest people in town. The bricks were used to build the colored people's home.
Right, and during the time that they built the colored people's home, then this was for black orphans. And they would put a number of black orphans there, and then pretty soon, you know, they had it filled up. But when when integration came, then That was one of the victims when they got rid of orphanage as we know it, because I think in Illinois today, you have very few, if any, orphanages that are left.
Eva Carol Monroe is this woman right here, second from the right. She's the one that was the force behind getting the home built, and the house is still there today, isn't it, Archie?
Yes, it's still there.
It's empty, of course.
Right, right. Lyman Hubbard purchased the home from, I believe it's John Crane, and he was an ex-firefighter. He knew Lyman, they were friends, and so we were never able to purchase the home, and because it was our intent that if we could have purchased the home, that is the NAACP, then we restored it and then make it into maybe a museum or what have you. So right now, the Hubbard family has the home, and to my understanding, they're going to try to auction it off, and I don't know what's going to have to happen to it, but right now it's in need of great repair. It would cost a considerable amount of money to restore it, but it would be another piece of history if we could do that.
Right above that is this wonderful picture, wonderful and heartbreaking at the same time, of the tent city which was located, and this was taken by Doc Helm, the tent city which was located where the Hay homes were later built.
Right. The thing about, when I came to Springfield in 1975. When I came to Springfield, the John Hay homes, as you can see in this picture right here, was, at that time, it was probably 90% black. Now this picture right here displays that when it was first built, it was more whites that was in there. In fact, the majority of them were whites at the time, and later on it changed. And as the years went past, the John Hay homes became crime-ridden. The Springfield Housing Association didn't do a very good job of keeping the properties up, and it became, you know, a low-class neighborhood. And from that, eventually, as we know, they tore them down, which was at its lowest point. It was probably a good thing.
Thank you, Archie.
All right.
Well, Babs Dickerman, you and Jerry and Archie have been working on this project for a long time, haven't you?
We have, really. We almost forgot until I saw the certificate of the National Historic Registration of the Lincoln Colored Home was dated 1998, August. I was thinking it was into the 2000s, but it wasn't. So we've been working on that particular project that
that's
long.
15 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. And so now you find yourself, you have a museum now, you have museum space and a place to go with all this stuff.
And a beautiful building that we didn't have to rehab, spend $300,000 to rehab the Lincoln Colored Home, which we still love.
Wouldn't that be terrific, though, if you could buy that and if you could afford to, restore that?
And that hasn't been lost.
You're still thinking about it?
No, it's in everyone's head. The particular one in his head who died last year was Bob Goza. We're going to get it back, he would always say.
Is that right? Well, maybe Bob will be right in the
He'll be
end.
praying for us.
Yeah, he will. Okay, you've lived here since 1933.
Yes, came from Aurora.
After, of course, and that was before Springfield was integrated. It was a segregated town before that. And on the east side, there were a lot of thriving black businesses. And I promised that we would show some of Doc Helm's pictures. And that's what we've set out here. This mortuary apparently was owned by a female. And interestingly, you all can't locate it.
No, we've had a number of people in here that say they think they know where it is, but we really can't pin it down. The black funeral home, the oldest one, is the white funeral home over there on Monroe Street, and maybe that preceded it, is what some people think.
But this was a black-owned funeral home, and it's probably been torn down because otherwise it'd be identified by now. Yeah.
Otherwise we could.
But I mean, goodness, I mean, you can tell these businesses are doing very well. There's a gas station that was on the east side. And as we travel from there to this looks like a hotel.
Yes, in those days, the very famous was the Panama Hotel. And I knew Jack Pettiford, who was an activist in the 50s and 60s, who said he had worked there at one time when he was a young man. And that was just a fabulous place.
It does, looks kind of swanky.
Yeah, it was very, very much so.
And then, of course, diners, they were thriving everywhere. And not only diners, but everybody, of course, always needed a barber shop. And we know that there were black-owned barber shops because Abraham Lincoln's barber was black.
That's right. His barber and Lincoln's best friend, a very close friend, in fact. Yeah. So now people do come in that can identify some of those faces. Yes. It's too bad that Doc Helm, who took the pictures, didn't really write out the names as you did of us this morning.
He's so busy,
other things.
Taking pictures of the mind that he didn't think about details about writing down who was who.
He was too professional for that.
It was interesting. The integration was a wonderful thing, but it hurt some black-owned businesses.
There have been good stories about that, yes. There were plenty. They could do almost everything on the east side. There were even shoe shops and that sort of thing. But when desegregation took place, probably about 52 or 3, they thought, gee, I can go to the Orpheum Theater, where previously they had to sit in the balcony, or go to Kresge's on 5th Street and get a Coke. So a couple of friends that said, who were my age, said, we decided we wanted to do things on the west side. And so these businesses stopped thriving, which is it's so ironic that that should happen.
It really is. Now, there's one other picture I want to make sure that we get to. Dr. King visited Springfield in 1965, and he looks like he and Mayor Nelson Howarth are of one mind.
Yes. And they were very much of one mind. If you knew Nelson Howarth cared very much about moving civil rights forward in every way. Partly maybe why he ran for mayor. I don't know. He was a very strong-minded man, very highly intelligent attorney, and he was not afraid of anyone. He could, so he made enemies and friends. We were doing the League of Women Voters in about 1965 when the Civil Rights Act came in. We thought, let's see if things have improved out there at the John Hay homes. We'll go in and do interviews. But they invited us out, a couple of other people that lived there. So we went door to door doing interviews. One thing we found out was that there were segregated streets as late as the 60s in the John Hay homes, white streets and black streets. But a committee of African Americans and League of Women Voters decided we wanted to change the housing ordinance. So we went to see Howarth. He says, what do you want to say? Now, very often you go to the public officials, you don't get that kind of a reception. He got out his legal pad, write down what we want to say, and the next thing you knew, the ordinance was before the city council. So that's why he made friends and enemies.
He was a man of action, wasn't he?
He really was. I was thinking this morning, I think he ran, then he got elected and then defeated, and then came back and ran again. I can't remember for sure if that was true, but he had 2 terms.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I love it.
The Springfield and Central Illinois African American History Museum is open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 3. With another Illinois Story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.